Welcome to r/malicious compliance, where we share stories of people conforming to the letter, but not the spirit of a request. Thank you, friends, for subscribing to the channel, and for so many likes. The first story. I filled out so many security reports that the store manager actually got mad. The second story. We must strictly follow the doctor's instructions, which meant not giving medicine until he gave us permission. The third story. My boss strictly told me to not do anything, since I wouldn't do a good job. The first story is, you need me to file safety reports? You got it. As a bit of context to understand the story, I work at a big box retail store. Over the past few months, they've decided to weigh a more heavy emphasis on store safety. Where to find safety tips, how to do things safely, and also how to file safety reports. There's 2 people on the security and safety team. It was around the last month that they really started cracking down on making sure that everyone in the entire store knew how to file a safety report. And the safety guy would spend a decent amount of time going around the store and quizzing people on how to file them, and also other safety-related things. And as a side note that will become important later, I'm pretty good friends with him. Once I was taught how to do it, my non-malicious compliance began. Normally working in retail, you do your job perfectly and there's no real need to file any sort of safety report, because nothing bad happens. But with my special case, I like to put it as, most others can do their jobs perfectly and be safe, but as the cart attendant, I can do my job perfectly and still get run over by a truck. Anyone who has worked in retail can confirm just how stupid customers can be at times. Now, when you put them behind the wheel of a multi-ton vehicle, things can get very dangerous very quickly if you don't keep your guard up. And so the safety reports begin to pile in from me. Typically, it was about 2 per week. Most of the reports came from having to make a turn or cross through an intersection in the parking lot. I would be stopped waiting for a safe opportunity to continue. A vehicle would come to a stop, I would begin to continue moving carts, and then the car would suddenly start moving and narrowly avoid hitting me and or my row of carts. And so I would just file these nearly missed accidents. I never really thought much of it. That is until we had a safety huddle for the entire store. That is when the leader had announced that their quota for safety reports for the whole store was 1 or 2 a week. For me, it hit that in the past 2 weeks from the safety reports that only I had made, not accounting for the other employees who were also filing, I was effectively giving the store its quota that it needed. I just thought it was funny, and later on that day told the safety guy about it. In our conversation, he told me that I was actually filing so many safety reports that the head of the store actually got mad at him because I was filing so many of them. As he put it, they told me to teach you guys how to file safety reports, and here you are filing legitimate safety reports. I don't know why they're mad. As we later put it, management quite doesn't recognize how dangerous it is to be in the parking lot. By this time, I had turned in my 2 weeks' notice for separate reasons, but he gave me a new drive. Just the knowledge that I was effectively taking blows at upper management just by doing exactly what they wanted me to do was enough to switch from normal compliance to malicious compliance. Because the parking lot is practically my domain, nearly missed accidents are abound for me. In the time since then, I still made about 3 or 4 safety filings. Today was my 3rd to last day that I'm scheduled to work at the store. Typical idiot drivers were abound, and I wind up making a safety report an hour into my shift. I don't think too much of it, other than the fact that maybe some management is infuriated that I'm doing exactly what I should again. Later on, I noticed the head of security and safety had left their office and was coming in my general direction. Because I was right next to the registers at the time, I thought that something else was going on. Just gave him a typical greeting, but was surprised when he came towards and stopped. He said to me, "Hey, if you ever have any more safety filings that deal with vehicles, just come to me or safety guy and report it to us directly." As soon as he left, I felt a sense of victory. My compliance in both malicious and non-malicious forms was too much for management, and they finally buckled under the weight of my safety report filings. I was almost laughing at the thought. I told a few coworkers about it, and all of them agreed with me that it was hilarious. The guy with the most dangerous job just got asked to stop making safety reports on the most dangerous aspect of their job because they were filing so many. As I said before, I already have my 2 weeks in, and I only have 2 more working days to go, so I don't really care that this feels unusual and not right. I'm just happy to move on to a new job. And in case if anyone is wondering, yes, I did have to go to the head of safety and security during my shift today, because someone almost hit the cart pusher later on in my shift. Edit 1. Looks like the reason they don't want me filling is because I filed 10 reports that had to deal with vehicles in a month, and the most they can do is tell me to slow down and pay attention. Sounds like you need to find out who in the corporation these safety reports are going to, and let them know that the head of security told you to bypass the system, and you'll send them a copy of your safety reports at the end. So that they can confirm that all the ones you file actually get to them. I think OSHA would be very interested to hear about that. The previous firm I worked for instituted a similar reporting scheme and made it a key performance indicator. Then they got mad about how much housekeeping reporting there was because it was always an obvious and easy report on any website. While the stated problem disappeared, new problems with housekeeping would be continually generated by work activities. The security manager called me about this, wanting to find a way to get rid of these reports. I told him there was nothing I could do, since it was my job. He didn't like it. The second story is, so you want us to contact you every time? Fresh out of college, I got a job working as a counselor at a residential group home for adults with chronic mental illness. The program itself was located in this depressed factory town out in the boonies, but my boss was awesome, and my position was pretty good, so I generally enjoyed the work. However, by virtue of being in a less than desirable location, the community doctors we sent our residents to were often pretty mediocre. This was an issue because as a result of state medication administration laws, we were expected to follow the doctor's orders to the letter, even when we could clearly tell they were wrong. Fortunately, my boss was usually pretty good at getting these mistakes cleared up when they occurred, and by virtue of being a total powerhouse, most of the doctors we worked with learned that it was the best to respond to her quickly. Enter D-Bag Doctor. One of our residents had recently begun seeing this guy, who kicked off their first appointment by being a condescending a-hole. If this weren't enough, he seemed to take it as near a personal offense whenever we called him for clarification or to revise mistakes, and he didn't seem to grasp the fact that by law, we couldn't correct even the most obvious errors without his say-so. Needless to say, none of the staff were that fond of this guy, but for a while there wasn't much we could do about it. Our chance to shine came a few months later, when this waste of a medical degree decided to prescribe one resident a twice-daily medication, and included instructions that unintentionally necessitated us calling him any time we would have needed to administer the med. Now, this obviously was an error, and to her credit, my boss initially tried to play nice about it. For 3 days, she held off on starting the new med, and left multiple messages with the doc's office, trying to get the order corrected. However, we got no reply, and eventually our boss decided we needed to put the medication into rotation. This made us staff skittish, so nobody wanted to get in trouble for a medication issue, but our boss gave us 3 specific directions. 1. Follow the doctor's order to the letter, which meant no administering the medication until he gave us clearance. 2. Call his office every single time we needed to provide the medication, and if he didn't pick up, leave a very specific message as to why we were calling. 3. Document any time we weren't able to give the medication as thoroughly as possible. While we normally didn't like having to call doctors, I think everyone relished leaving voicemails for this jackass, explaining exactly why we couldn't give the med he prescribed, due to his badly written orders. Now, these messages were probably annoying, but they were only the tip of the iceberg that was my boss's plan. You see, one other caveat of the state medication laws was that any time a med wasn't given as it was supposed to be, the responsible agency had to immediately submit a form explaining this mistake. Thus, every time our resident wasn't able to take their meds, my boss had been preparing one of these forms, just waiting for when the doctor finally admitted his mistake. Finally, after 5 days of silence, the doctor finally called us and coped to his mistake. In response, now that we had it on record that he was the at-fault party for the missed medication, my boss gladly sent him every single backlogged error form. I can only imagine the doctor's reaction upon receiving hours worth of paperwork, all of which would have needed to be finished ASAP. Needless to say, he got better at responding to our program's messages. Doctors can be the biggest jerks who walk the earth, self-deprecating since I'm one of them. In my job, I have to deal with poorly written orders all the time. I beg my employees to call and get clarification, but after being yelled at so much, they're very reluctant to call. They would rather do the wrong study than be yelled at by an annoyed doctor. Doctors can be trained. Negative reinforcement is a very persuasive method of getting doctors to do things right the first time. Tease them enough and they will eventually change their behavior. As a trainee, I learned very quickly to make sure that all my nightly orders were set and crossed if I wanted to get even a little sleep. If I need to contact someone whose title I'm hesitant to know, if he works in the medical or academic field, I call him doctor. Some doctors get offended when they're not addressed as such, but I never seen anyone get offended if a stranger mistook them for a doctor. The last story is, you don't want me to organize our documents? Cool, I won't do it then. This is something I remembered about my previous job and I want to share it. I used to work as a legal assistant in a big electric energy company. They're owners of a lot of wind energy plants here in my country, and to say that they're a strong competitor in this market is an understatement at best. We initially used Microsoft SharePoint as a server for all our functional systems, and to save all of our documents, but the CEO decided to change it to the Box system. The difference between them was so huge that it was shocking. I was unusually in charge of saving all our documents and data in the system, so when the change was announced, I expected orders coming from the legal counsel, the final boss of my department obviously, to give me that direct order. During a team call via Teams, she started to talk about Box and how we must organize our stuff. Since a big part of them were the company's contracts, we needed everything in check. As ridiculous as this sounds, the legal department wasn't liked by at least 5 other departments. And truth be told, our document server was a mess. Each person had their own way to save stuff and nothing made sense. Even the legal counsel said it herself. Our server looked like some kid's room when they have a lot of fun, and don't tidy up on the next second. Of course, this was extremely bad. As she mentioned the organization of the system, I immediately proposed to be the one to create a routine for us to save stuff, such as the archive naming, folder distribution, etc. The paralegal, she was great, also offered to help me, since the workload was immense. We practically would start from scratch and do our best without a basis. My direct boss, one of the legal analysts, immediately interrupted us and said she was going to do it. I told her she wouldn't have enough time, since she's mostly busy analyzing contracts and other incidents. She said for me not to worry because I also had a truckload of things to do, and that I wouldn't do a great job anyway. Really? Fine, I won't do it then. Fast forward to a month. We were entering the archive transferring phase of the project. Every single department in the company must have their server organized, because they would do a direct transfer without any sort of checking. Guess what? Our server was still a freaking mess. And to top it all off, the VP came towards the legal counsel and ordered her to have everything organized in 48 hours. Yes, 48 hours to organize a completely complicated and messy server. In an emergency team call, she questioned my boss why nothing has been done regarding the server. My boss, trying to keep her own slate clean, threw me under the bus, saying that she shifted the responsibility to me. Luckily, the paralegal backed me up and saved me. She reminded us of the call where my boss strictly told me to not do anything, since I wouldn't do a good job. Despite the hassle, the counselor told me to stop everything I was previously doing and just organize our system. And so I did. I cleaned up the server in the allotted time, had to reorganize everything on my own, didn't eat, sleep, just to make sure everything was in check. When the day came, the VP checked on us again and saw what I did. She said for the counselor to not let things go out this way again, and that I had done a miracle and a half for my department. Boy, what a day. At the time, I skipped them because I didn't want to lose my job at the time, so I just went ahead and forgot my own necessities to make it in time. I hope you got a nice bonus for that. The boss had to answer for the mess since it was on him. The server was a mess. There was no one to deal with it, and you were afraid of getting fired? I think you had more leverage than you thought. I wish you would have told me that the advisor left a broken man because he was such a royal a-hole. Don't forget to subscribe and have a nice day.